Okay, I want you to close your eyes for just a second. Picture 19th century London. You can almost smell that thick, choking coal smoke of the Industrial Revolution, right? But instead of just hearing the clatter of horse hooves on cobblestone, the air is completely filled with this incessant, rhythmic, mechanical clicking. A clicking that stretches across world-spanning networks. Today, in this explainer, we are diving into an alternate timeline. A reality where the digital age absolutely did not wait for silicon, but was forged right then and there in brass and iron.
And it all stems from this one mind-bending core premise. What if supercomputers were invented in the Victorian era? I want you to step through a portal with me into a totally different dimension here. Think about the sheer, massive scale of the British Empire at its peak, and then just hand them the power of mass data processing, over a century ahead of schedule. How does human history change? How does society completely warp and bend around this massive, sudden influx of computational power?
So, let's dive into this. Our current digital reality today is, well, it's microscopic. It's practically invisible. We're talking silent silicon chips, tiny microprocessors, light pulsing through fiber optic cables. But in this alternate timeline, the digital revolution is visceral. It is heavy. It's built out of gargantuan monoliths of gleaming brass gears, heavy iron shafts, millions upon millions of precisely moving cogs, and the whole shebang is entirely driven by the deafening roar of high-pressure steam engines. It is literally a steampunk superpower brought vividly to life.
To understand how we actually get to these steam-powered behemoths, let's look at Section 1, the brass digital revolution.
It all kicks off with a single, massive butterfly effect. In our reality, you might know that Charles Babbage designed the analytical engine, which was this brilliant theoretical mechanical computer, but he never actually finished it. He hit funding walls, engineering limits, you name it. But in this timeline, he succeeds. Fueled by the virtually limitless wealth and resources of the British Empire, Babbage's invention isn't just completed. Actually, scratch that. It's not just completed. It is successfully mass-produced. This single point of divergence hits the fast-forward button on the entire trajectory of human history by centuries.
Now, what's really fascinating here is exactly who is driving this revolution. It's not some scrappy private tech company in a garage. It is the British government. Using these intricate punch card systems fed into those brass behemoths, the Crown can optimize its vast empire in literal seconds. We're talking analyzing complex global trade routes, calculating tax revenues from across the globe instantaneously, and tracking military logistics across entirely different continents. The tactical advantage they gained here is absolutely staggering.
But a computer is really only as powerful as the network it's connected to. So let's step right into Section 2, inside the SteamNet.
Welcome to the SteamNet. This is, for all intents and purposes, the Victorian version of the Internet. Because there are no fiber optic cables or wireless Wi-Fi signals, this massive global network has to be entirely mechanical. It is built from the sprawling subterranean labyrinth of pneumatic tubes and automated telegraph lines linking the whole world together. It perfectly mirrors the function of our modern internet, but it uses purely mechanical, physical engineering to move all that information.
Let's break down how this actually builds into a practical, functioning system, just to get a visual. Imagine the flow of physical data here. Step 1. You input your punch card data at these massive central hubs located right in London. Step 2. That data is translated and transmitted instantly via those automated telegraphs and high-speed pneumatic tubes. And then Step 3. The processed outputs are physically received, like as freshly punched cards or printed ticker tape, at colonial outposts in places like Delhi or Sydney. It's a physical, clattering, hissing internet spanning the globe.
And this network isn't just for sending friendly messages back and forth. Oh no, it's for maintaining incredibly strict imperial authority. The British Crown actually utilizes primitive, punch card-driven, predictive algorithms to monitor the economic and social stability of its territories. By crunching all this data at lightning speed, they can literally predict uprisings and crush rebellions before they even manifest into physical threats. It is data-driven imperialism on a scale we could never have imagined back then.
By the time this timeline reaches the modern day, the physical world has been completely transformed. Which brings us to Section 3, a futuristic antique world.
Unlike our world, right, where computing power shrank down to fit right into our pockets, this alternate reality faces some pretty severe physical limitations. Because mechanical computers require massive amounts of physical space and just immense steam power to turn thousands of tons of brass and iron, computing remains heavily centralized. You definitely wouldn't have a brass smartphone in your pocket. I mean, unless you also wanted to haul around a backpack full of burning coal, which doesn't sound great. Instead, you've got these state-owned, fortress-like facilities completely dominating city skylines, just billowing steam and heavily guarded by the military.
And this brings about just a bizarre technological leap, because these giant computers can run incredibly complex mechanical simulations. Victorian engineers unlocked the secrets of advanced metallurgy, chemistry, and aerodynamics a full century ahead of schedule. Look at this timeline. By the 1870s, science is booming. By the 1880s, massive steel skyships, guided by complex mechanical autopilots, are literally filling the skies. And by the 1890s, automated factories run entirely by brass punch card machinery completely replace traditional human labor. It is quite literally a futuristic antique reality.
But of course, you absolutely cannot fundamentally alter the technological fabric of a society without some massive human consequences. So let's look at Section 4, the technocratic social order.
The integration of all this advanced data processing into the already incredibly rigid, class-based Victorian society creates this highly unique, technocratic hierarchy. The old elite, the wealthy landowners, they're totally replaced. The new elite are the analytical engineers. These are the brilliant minds who understand and command the logic of the machines. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have the displaced workers. These are the traditional human laborers who suddenly, overnight, find themselves entirely obsolete, facing severe, unprecedented economic ruin.
And as you might guess, this sudden, unchecked automation does not happen peacefully. These massive economic shifts spark intense, severe labor riots all across the industrial North. I wanted you to imagine tens of thousands of displaced workers clashing with imperial forces right in the shadow of the very automated, steam-powered factories that took their livelihoods. The societal backlash is immediate, it's violent, and it is desperate.
To manage all this unrest, the state does what states often do. It turns its massive computational power inward. Let's explore Section 5, the Imperial Surveillance State.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this. The very technology built to manage global trade rapidly becomes a weapon of domestic control. The state implements an omnipresent mechanical surveillance apparatus. Suddenly, they are tracking criminal records, they're monitoring exact financial statuses, and, perhaps most terrifyingly of all, calculating the social loyalties of everyday citizens. And this is all stored on millions upon millions of brass filing disks, constantly spinning, constantly sorting, constantly watching you.
We are ultimately left with a really stark juxtaposition here. On one hand, this timeline gives humanity incredible triumphs, unprecedented medical advances decoded by these mechanical brains, structural engineering marvels like the sky ships. It's amazing. But on the other hand, the cost is just devastating. Every single citizen is living their life under the suffocating shadow of absolute, cold, imperial authority. It is a digital revolution born not out of democratic ideals, but right in the heart of a rigid monarchy.
The source material we're looking at summarizes this reality beautifully and, honestly, a bit chillingly. Listen to this. A world of unmatched technological brilliance bound by the strict, cold discipline of the British Empire. It's a society that has completely conquered the physical limits of science, only to turn around and use those victories to build an inescapable, mechanical cage for its own people.
And this brings us to a final, provocative thought. I really want you to take this away with you today. We spent this explainer exploring a fantasy of steam and brass, right? But look at our modern world today, our world of silicon, smartphones, and constant data harvesting. The big question is, if the hardware changes from brass to silicon, does the fundamental desire for surveillance, data collection, and state control remain exactly the same? The technology might be a whole lot quieter now, but perhaps the gears are still turning all the same. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions and never stop learning.